guys, welcome back to my channel Legend and Lies, and today's story is quite heartbreaking. By the way, I'm at Fred Hunter Cemetery in Hollywood, Florida. This story is very hard to talk about even after all these years because the incident occurred in 1999. It's about a young girl. Her name was Tiffany Eunick, and a boy called Lionel Tate. Now, Lionel was a child as well. He was only 12 years old when this tragedy happened, and Tiffany was only 6. So they were just kids. And what unfolded, honestly, is so tragic and hard to believe. Tiffany was over at Lionel's house being babysat by Lionel's mom, who was a Florida state trooper. So apparently she had worked the overnight shift the previous night, so she went upstairs for a snooze to try and catch some rest and left the kids alone for a bit. So that's when things took a devastating turn. According to Lionel, they were just playing. He said they were wrestling, kind of mimicking what he saw on TV. He saw it on TV, so he was just trying to act it out. And that's Lionel's explanation. That's what they were doing. He said it was nothing malicious. It was just kids' play. But somewhere along the way, things got out of hand. Lionel said he put Tiffany in a headlock and slammed the poor child on the couch. He dropped her on the floor. And you know what makes this so hard to wrap your head around is that Tiffany, this sweet little girl, ended up with these injuries that took her life. It's so severe. Her liver was lacerated. Her skull was fractured. She had internal bleeding. Her ribs were fractured. And these were injuries so severe it matched being in a head-on collision. What's even harder to process is that Lionel claimed he didn't mean to hurt her. He said it was all an accident, just roughhousing gone wrong. Now, this is where the case took a controversial turn because Lionel was now charged with first-degree murder, a 12-year-old charged with first-degree murder. And in the state of Florida, when you're convicted of first-degree murder, it's an automatic life sentence without parole. He was convicted of first-degree murder. And Lionel became the youngest person in U.S. history at that time to be sentenced to life without parole. But I will tell you this, Lionel was offered a plea deal by the prosecution where he would have had to plead guilty to second-degree murder, and I believe he would have had to serve 10 years probation and 3 years in prison. But they rejected this because his mom was adamant that he didn't murder Tiffany. It was an accident, and then they ended up rejecting that deal. Of course, people were divided, right? Everyone was divided. Some thought the punishment was too harsh for a 12-year-old because after all, this is a 12-year-old child. There's a reason why 12-year-olds don't drive. There's a reason why 12-year-olds aren't allowed to drink. There's a reason why 12-year-olds aren't allowed to vote because they're children, right? So while other people thought Tiffany had a lacerated liver, Tiffany had multiple fractures, including her ribs. She had internal bleeding. Part of her skull was dislodged. So these were severe injuries that a lot of people found it very hard to just bypass, regardless of Lionel's age. He was convicted of first-degree murder, and Lionel became the youngest person in U.S. history at that time to be sentenced to life without parole. He looked like a child in that courtroom. He looked like a child thinking, what am I gonna get for dinner? What PlayStation game am I gonna play? He didn't, I don't believe he understood the severity of what was happening. He didn't understand that at the end of this, you might end up in jail, never to be free ever again. He didn't understand it. But I will tell you this, Lionel was offered a plea deal by the prosecution, which was turned down by his legal team or his mom, whoever did that. It was turned down. So, and the plea deal would have given him 3 years in prison, 10 years probation, Yes, that was a plea deal, which to me sounded a bit fair because, it was accountability, right? Because someone passed away, so it's accountability. But his mom rejected that because his mom believed that, yes, Tiffany passed away, but this was an accident. And she would have preferred a manslaughter charge, not a murder charge, because she felt like Lionel didn't intentionally kill Tiffany. They were playing, and this was an accident on his end. Okay, so the grave is over this side. And here it is. Here it is right here. It's unmarked, but it's right here. We're going to leave some flowers. I needed help from the cemetery to locate it, but this is exactly where it is. So an update on Lionel. He ended up having his conviction thrown out after he served 3 years, and instead of risking another trial, they ended up taking the plea deal. Remember that same plea deal that was offered to them a few years ago? Well, they ended up taking that exact plea deal. He ended up going home, doing well, going to culinary school, Le Cordon Bleu, and seemingly doing well. Well, that's until he was arrested for attempting to rob a pizza delivery man in his area. And he was arrested and charged with violation of parole and also the attempted robbery. He was then sentenced to 30 years behind bars. So he went back to prison. Right now, he is back in a Florida prison, serving out his time. He's scheduled to be released 2030. Sad story all the way around, guys. Thank you for watching. May the souls of the faithful departed rest in peace. See you next time.